Botswana. As you have seen in the program, we have an array of speakers that are expected to give us highlights on the projects and some level of detail. Idea and objective being that we share this information with you. You come back to us with your comments and questions as may be necessary. Without wasting more of your time, I would like to start the process. And once again, thank you for joining this webinar, which I hope will meet your expectations. I would like to start off by calling on His Excellency, the Ambassador of EU to Botswana and SADC, and for him to give us his short opening remarks. Dadeyan SADC, you can give us your remarks.
Well, thanks a lot so much, and it's great to be with you. I'm speaking, I think I cannot turn on my video, but because it has been, I think, disabled by you, but it's okay with me. I'm happy to be here anyway.
Oh.
So
I think you can now see your face.
There I am. I don't know. It's possibly a good idea to be visual. Thanks a lot, Executive Secretary Mr. Pera Ramueli, and also I would like to recognize the presence here of several OKACOM member states representatives, also fellow speakers, Ms. Portia Segomelo and Dr. Marina Story. I know we have also Mr. Simon Johnson and Mr. Mukendoi Mutelo also in the panel. We have OKACOM and technical assistance team staff also with us, I believe. Good to be with you. So ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Bom dia, I think it's appropriate to say. I'm often asked to give this kind of opening remarks, and today I'm very delighted to do so, because the Okavango Delta is actually one of my favorite places on Earth. And the OKACOM Secretariat will know this, but that's actually the reason why behind me here on the wall in my office have the Delta actually, and some elephants that are walking through the waters. So I have the Okavango Delta on my mind every day when I enter my office. I've actually been lucky also to travel there a few times. Last time was after New Year this year. And it's quite surprising to me that the Delta was declared a World Heritage Site only 7 years ago. I think it was in June 2014. And I think it was, the list has about 1,000 sites, and I think it was on time that the Okavango Delta also ended up on the list. So ladies and gentlemen, though the Delta is one of the most iconic wilderness areas on the planet, the Okavango Basin as a whole has an outstanding array of biodiversity. And it's not just the home of threatened large mammals like rhinos, cheetahs, wild dogs, and lions. And it's not only a vital habitat for the largest elephant populations in the world, it's also a globally important hotspot and wetland oasis for a myriad of bird species. And the basin is also home to 500,000 people who depend on the Okavango's resources for their livelihoods. Some communities have lived in the area for thousands of years, keeping good stewardship of the natural environment that they depend on. The European Union is partnering with OKACOM in its mission to assist Botswana, Namibia, and Angola to jointly make the wisest decisions on the future of the Okavango River and its basin. We are doing this by providing top-notch technical assistance to OKACOM and by helping to set up a decision support system based on collecting and crunching plenty of data from monitoring sites around the river. Just last Friday, the OKACOM team went out to the Gaborone Dam to test some riverboats and core sampling equipment that the EU has contributed to the project. It was great to see you doing that on Twitter actually the other day. By extracting and analyzing long tubes of sediment from the river bottom, scientists will be able to look back in time to establish rainfall and flooding patterns over thousands of years. I'm told that the boats and equipment passed the test and will now be sent to riverside scientific stations in each of the 3 countries. Thanks to this equipment and newly trained staff, we are proud to say that this will be the first time such core samples will be taken in the Okavango River. When combined with several decades of leading-edge satellite imaging, the sediment information will help make predictions about future rainfall and flooding patterns. Other types of monitoring equipment to be installed in separate points of the river will also give real-time information on water flow and giving early warning on floods before they arrive. Flood forecasting is critical for people whose livelihoods depend on the river, including smallholder farmers, fisherfolk, and those working in tourism. So I'm sure that you will also learn much more about this from the experts in the panel. Let me just now finally and briefly return to the question on why the European Union decided to partner with OKACOM with a €6 million support program. There are 3 basic drivers to the EU's support to the Okavango Basin. First, it's about protecting biodiversity. It is a core part of the so-called European Green Deal, which is a central concept of the EU's international partnerships. The Okavango certainly deserves protection as one of Africa's great biodiversity hotspots and one of the last pristine wild areas in the world. Another example of the commitment of the European Union and its member states, we call ourselves Team Europe, to this area is through Germany and France's support to the Kavango Zambezi, the CASA, which is the world's largest transfrontier conservation area. Rich biodiversity is the bedrock of safari tourism, and tourism creates good quality jobs for local people. Our second interest is to improve the livelihoods of the people who depend on the Okavango's resources. We want to ensure that riverside communities can continue counting on the Okavango as a source of crystal clear drinking water and for sustainable irrigation. Through OKACOM and in partnership with the UNDP's Global Environment Facility, we're also supporting the area's small-scale farmers to grow the crops they need for their food security and to protect their soils against erosion through conservation agriculture. Further, we believe that local livelihoods and fragile ecosystems should not be put in danger by heavy industry, and least of all by oil extraction when the climate crisis demands that we now move away from fossil fuels. Finally, the EU aims to prevent conflict before it arises, and we believe that transboundary cooperation fostered through OKACOM is the best way to do this in an area where the interests of Angola, Botswana, and Namibia are not always aligned. So let me close by wishing the OKACOM and the Transboundary Water Project the greatest of success. I hope the project will help us all to gain a greater appreciation of the outstanding natural heritage that the people of Okavango have been entrusted to preserve for the enjoyment of generations to come, long into the future. So I would like to thank you again for your attention and also wish you a good webinar. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for very good and encouraging words from your presentation. And it does demonstrate your level of appreciation and knowledge of the basin, which is very welcoming to us. I think we really have had, and we are very grateful for the support that we've been receiving from the EU, particularly on this project. And this is not the first, it's been a process that has happened even before. I would like to then move forward to get an overview of this program by the program manager, Ms. Portia Sofomelo, who is also not new to the basin. She is one of the people that started the work in the basin as a former OBSC and commissioner member in the basin. And therefore, she's now the project manager for this project, and would like to hear her give us a few slides on the overview of the project so that we gain much more knowledge on this. Portia, you ready to do your presentation?
Thank you very much.
I'll put up the screen.
Executive Secretary, Mr. Kararameni, and also special thanks to you, Ambassador Sadek. And good afternoon, dear participants, and good morning to those who are connected from the Americas. It is indeed a pleasure and an opportunity for us as project management unit to get this opportunity to touch base and connect with all of you internationally to give an update of where we are with the program and where we hope to get to as the process unfolds. I have been introduced already. Portia Sofomelo, who's managing the program. I'm with a team of colleagues here at the OKACOM. Colleagues, the ambassador spoke quite eloquently about the socioeconomic and ecological status of the basin that we are managing. This is in keeping with the OKACOM Vision and Strategic Action Plan. In putting together this program, deliberate effort was made to align it to the strategic action plan, the vision and the mandate of the OKACOM. It was important to make it relevant so that whatever that is programmed under this important project augurs well with the intentions of the Commission as it aspires to sustainably manage the basin. In that regard, the key purpose of is to deliver a decision support system which will provide scientifically based advice to promote a prosperous, socially just, Cubango-Okavango River Basin in the long term. In doing that, we hope as a program management team, together working within the OKACOM framework, want to pull off at the end of the programmatic lineup that is with us for 4 years of the project, to leave OKACOM with a DSS that is regularly used by the Commission and member states. Underline the regularity aspect of it. This is not just a piecemeal kind of venture. We hope this facility, this infrastructure that is being put in place through the support of the European Union will put in place a regularly maintained support system in terms of making decisions which will take the management of the basin towards attaining its vision. Equally important is putting up a functioning and sustainable monitoring program. I would want to also indicate here that we want to recognize the already existing monitoring programs that are in place by the member states. The EU's program is here in coming in to support what has already been started prior by enhancing the monitoring programs, specifically installation of the hydrometeorological and ecological infrastructure that will enhance the monitoring programs that are already in place. We are guided by a number of principles in putting together a decision support system for the Commission. We want to get within the users and managers of the basin to have a common understanding of the decision support system. If we can achieve that as a matter of principle, there will be uniformity and harmony in terms of how all the other programmatic exigencies that the Commission has under its strategic plans can be effectively and efficiently guided. Enhancing the monitoring programs is another important program. Monitoring is a long-term venture. State-of-the-art technology will be installed within the basin to facilitate such efforts towards a comprehensive monitoring program. The other principle relates to the direct involvement of the OKASEC, the member states, and even all other organizations that partake in the monitoring programs and the sustainable management of the basin. The EU is not coming in to work in isolation. We put the importance of inclusivity in terms of the broader OKACOM stakeholdership in managing and executing the program. So involvement of all that are concerned is of primary concern to us as we discharge the activities that are lined up under the program. Oversight continues to be the mandate of the Commission. In terms of the programming, in terms of the budgeting, and decisions about or and around the management of the project itself and the execution of all the activities in the program. We only come in as the project management unit to facilitate what already OKACOM aspires to get at with the support of the EU on this program. I'm working with a team as a project manager, which include a decision support specialist, admin and finance, and a team lead who's been assigned to us by Pegasus. We thank you, Pegasus, for that. And also with the support of a team of highly professional technical experts. At any point in time, we have 15 or 18 technical experts who are fielded to lead in the technical exigencies of the program across the basin. These are key to the execution of the program as principles. Some of you may be interested to know how the program is structured. The ambassador spoke about the amount of money, approximately €6 million, which we thank the EU for in implementing the program. The way it's structured is through three components. First, we have a direct grant, and the modality for managing that grant is the OKACOM structures and systems, and that is where we are embedded as a program management unit. In that direct grant, a sum of 1.670,000 euro has been allocated, plus the 693,000, which is member state contribution towards that. So just over 2 million, just to make sure that the project staffing and management responsibilities are well catered for. And I have to indicate here, this also includes part of the money for the land management, which one of my colleagues will speak to in detail later on. The second component relates to the technical assistance contract. EU was kind enough to allocate close to 2 million of the project funds to facilitate on contractual basis, a team of experts, which I spoke about earlier on, to assist us technically as we undertake the work. And this fund is managed through the EU financial administrative modalities. And thirdly, the third component is that which relates to the procurement. This program is very procurement heavy because the aspiration is to enhance the monitoring program, which I spoke about earlier, and 2 million euro has been allocated towards setting up as best as possible equipment at strategic locations within selected localities in the basin to purchase equipment which is required to improve monitoring. We'll speak a bit more later about that meteorological monitoring equipment. Participants, do not be too overwhelmed by this illustration. It is just a diagrammatic illustration which ties the 3 programmatic areas of the project. Highlighted in yellow in this slide, I want at this stage to focus on the 3 yellow, hopefully we are not colorblind, the 3 result areas. First, the objective to operationalize the decision support system. And below that, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 are the activity level kind of interventions, which I'll not at this stage speak to, but these are the sub-items that would take us towards operationalizing a decision support system, which I said when we leave after 4 years of the program, we should have a fully functional decision support system. To the right of the diagram is another important key result area of strengthening water resource management. Underscore the strengthening. The departments responsible for water affairs in the 3 states have monitoring programs, infrastructure, and for a long time they have done to the best of their ability to monitor their national chapters of the basin in terms of the hydrological flows, to some extent quality, but through the program, we want to strengthen their efforts by giving them a bit more mileage in terms of building their capacity, installing the infrastructure, identifying where the gaps are, and coming in as the EU program to augment their capacity to monitor effectively and hopefully to get them to have a sustained and long-term monitoring program in the future. And to the bottom of the screen, the third strategic area is that of strengthening land management. Dear participants, water and land interface is a necessary imperative for a program of this nature. while water is a primary resource, the land management aspects are also key because it also introduces to the program the human component, the human face. What is it that is happening or transpiring in the basin as the human component, the people who reside in the basin use the resources of the Okavango Basin. There are observed pockets of degradation. There are land use aspirations and policies and planning programs in place within the member states. With the support of the governments in the 3 member states, the program has identified the need to strengthen that component through some demonstrations and pilot activities, so that while we gather information from the hydrometeorological point of view, we also take cognizance of the importance of the basin to the socioeconomic aspects and the livelihood aspirations of the basin. All the information that is gathered in that circle in the illustration is being compiled and processed and analyzed and fed into a decision support system. A lot of programs have been implemented in the Okavango Basin. A lot more are still being implemented even as we speak. This European Union support comes in place to augment and to collaborate and recognize the importance of partnership. We are aligning as we implement the program to a number of international collaborating partners. This is just a sample of them. There are a lot more. And please don't feel like your organization has been left out. This is just an example to show that with CREDIF, for example, the vulnerability hotspots related to communities, we worked with them on identifying those. The design of the hydrometeorological stations, we worked with CREDIF, so that we don't find the program duplicating effort. Instead, it's a pooling mechanism, and also to try and be efficient and add value as we support the implementation of the strategic action plan of the Commission. The UNDP GEF program, which is also embedded here within the OKACOM, is another instrumental partner. I can cite the monitoring program that is lined up under that, the UNDP project in terms of sediment monitoring, underground water monitoring, as well as hydrological monitoring. And with the ecological monitoring that is coming from the EU, we will only enhance the capacity of the already existing monitoring that is happening. So we also have resilient waters, which also, for example, I'll cite just one instance in terms of the support that we are getting in training our communities, also identification of communities that we can work with as we pilot and test best practices on the land management component. National Geographic, the Nature Conservancy, and the work that we are working with on in terms of the CORB fund. These are just some of the partners that we are collaborating with, so that there is a synergistic approach as we implement the program and add value and meaningfully come to results that we can be proud that we indeed, as the international collaborating partners, have added value to the strategic action program of the Commission. This is just to give an overview in terms of what the program is about. I'll leave it at this ES and colleagues, and those 3 objectives will be unpacked further by my colleagues in terms of the DSS, the water resource management component, and the land management component. I thank you for listening. Obrigado.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Portia. We will then need to move to the next presentation. I want to ask colleagues who are going to make presentation that you are limited to 10 minutes, and let's probably try and stick to the 10 minutes because we would like to leave enough time for the participants to ask questions or interact, but I thought it was important that we give a very broad overview of the program. And therefore, at this point in time, without wasting much time, I would like to request our technical assistant expert, who's going to give us the presentation on the program, specifically to talk to issues of strengthening water resources management. And this would be Simon Johnson, who, as we mentioned, is one of the technical assistant support to the program. You have the floor, sir.
Thanks very much, Executive Secretary, and good afternoon to everybody on this webinar, and thank you for joining. Also, thank you to the Ambassador, and thank you to our EU Project Manager, Portia, for that introduction. Before I continue, can I just get confirmation that my screen is sharing properly at the moment? Yes, or Portia, could you just confirm that for me, please?
I can see it.
Simon, you need to go into presentation mode.
Yeah, he's on presentation mode, but we are seeing two screens. Maybe you can remove the presenter view so that we all see one screen.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That's better, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. So as has been introduced, I'm going to take us through results area 2 of the EU program, which focuses on water resource management. And essentially, there are two main components within this. The first is around developing and enhancing monitoring programs. I think as has been just shown in some of the previous slides, there's a large collaborative effort in terms of the monitoring programs within OKACOM and within the basin at the moment. And what you will see is that our focus has largely been on water resource, ecological and climate related data, although some of the procurement, as the Ambassador also mentioned, has linked across to some of the sediment monitoring and some of the other monitoring, water quality related monitoring that is going on within the basin. But I will elaborate more on this as I move forward. Secondly, then the other component is a flood early warning system with the overall objective of reducing flood damage in the basin, and I've got a few slides to take you through that. So moving straight into it, and starting with the hydrometeorological monitoring, which essentially is a focus on water level and discharge monitoring, as well as some more climatological type monitoring. And here's just a few photos of some of the existing stations and the existing types of monitoring going on within the basin, just to give you a feel for what is going on. But before going into exactly what we've done, I would like to just give a little bit of history and a little bit of context around monitoring in the basin, which I think will help understand the approach that we've adopted. I've got two graphics on the screen here, which are obviously very busy, and I don't want you to worry about all of the nitty-gritty detail, but the purpose of this is to show the number of stations, both rainfall and streamflow stations and gauges that have been utilized in the past. Some of these have been utilized a long time ago, decades ago, and some are still being used, and some are in varying states of disrepair, while some are obviously in good condition and still providing data for decision makers within the basin. Just a brief summary of that situation. In Angola, the majority of the data, the monitoring data that is available is from before the Civil War, which was from 1975 to 2002. Your rainfall and streamflow data typically is a little sporadic, but is between the 1950 to 1975 range. And after the Civil War, there were some initiatives that rehabilitated some stations, so there's actually limited data available after 2002 up until about 2010. But at this point, I would like to stress the hydrological significance and importance of monitoring in the upper parts of the basin. And I've got a slide after this that will just stress that fact, because that is where the majority of the rainfall and then subsequently the runoff is generated from. With respect to Namibia and Botswana, there are, it's a very similar trend. There's less stations with a better quality of data and a longer record length. However, both of these areas are obviously less influential in terms of the runoff generating rainfall. But the stations of most significance are, as you can see in the green dots, are at Rundu, which is on the main stem Cubango, one of the major tributaries, at Mukwe, which is downstream of the confluence, Mohembo at the entrance to the Okavango Delta, and then at Mount Bridge at the outlet of the Delta. And these gauges typically have a record length of 50 to 80 years, which is significant and very important to us in the hydrological field when it comes to hydrological monitoring, etc., and becomes very useful for modeling purposes and other planning initiatives. This slide just briefly is to stress that importance and important to understand in the context of planning monitoring. On the left-hand side is precipitation trends across the basin, and I won't go into the detail, but suffices to say you can see the different color scalings with the majority of the rainfall falling right in the upper parts of the basin in Angola. And subsequently and fairly intuitively, the incremental runoff, as you can see on the right here, this is broken up into various sub-basins as per our hydrological modeling, and it gives a nice indication of where the majority of the runoff is generated within the basin. And you can see how it gradually gets less all the way down towards the entrance to the delta in Botswana. So with that context in mind, and the history of monitoring, we under the EU program have spent a lot of time and put a lot of emphasis on stakeholder engagement and collaboration in the planning, design and development of the hydromet monitoring in the basin. This is important to ensure the sustainability and the longevity of whatever interventions are made under the program. This photo here in the background, as you can see, is of a number of specialists within the basin who are involved in the monitoring and who are being trained. And they are going to be absolutely essential and integral to the monitoring going forward. Some brief examples of the collaborations that Maposha has already actually touched on. Firstly, the Water Resource Technical Committee we've had, which is represented by the different member states. We've had a lot of engagement with them, a number of engagements where eventually agreement was reached on the location of the sites and the level of the monitoring. Importantly, either key sites of transboundary importance or perhaps those more of national importance. And that will filter through to the data sharing protocol, which has been another initiative undertaken under this program, which one of my colleagues will present on later. Also, standardization of equipment across the countries was an important outcome of those engagements, with the thinking of creating a community of practice within the basin and across the member states so that the people responsible for the monitoring can assist each other and help troubleshooting, and again with the aim of trying to ensure the longevity of the systems. There's unfortunately a track record in the past where systems have been installed and they have unfortunately broken down after a year or two, and that's certainly something that we're trying to avoid in this situation. I won't dwell on this, but the planning and design of the infrastructure, we've had collaboration with the likes of the Okavango Wilderness Project from the National Geographic team, who are also doing monitoring in the Okavango, in the Angolan portion of the basin. All of this is on a focus to optimize the use of resources and minimize duplication within the basin. And as has already been mentioned, we're responsible for the design of 4 stations in Angola that will now be constructed by the EU program. Another important initiative is the joint monitoring surveys, something that's largely been driven by the UNDP GEF program. And the EU program will be joining up with these initiatives later in this year, hopefully. COVID depending. And these are initiatives that are building trust as there's representatives from all the member states. And again, building this community of practice and knowledge transfer around the different monitoring going on within the basin. The outcomes of all of these engagements have been decisions on the site locations. And I won't dwell too much, but just to say that there are 8 key sites that have been agreed upon. And there's 4 in the Angolan part of the basin, they're highlighted in green, and 2 in Namibia and 2 in Botswana. Those in yellow on this map are those that are classified as being of national importance. In the EU program, we've also procured weather station equipment to record temperature, rainfall, humidity, and air pressure data. It's still a work in progress as to exactly where these are going to be installed, and discussions are underway as to see exactly how far the resources can stretch in terms of the construction of the civil works that are required to install all of this equipment. So to summarize the activities that have been undertaken under the program so far, we have actually developed a hydrometeorological monitoring plan. It's an actual document which looks at gives information on all of the sites, the sampling frequencies, etc., and the different parameters. We've mentioned the design of these 8 key sites, 4 of which were designed by CRITIF, 4 by the EU program, and then construction of all 8 of them will be done by the EU program. Those contracts for construction are in place, both the civil works and the equipment installation, and unfortunately we had hoped to be a lot further down the line with this process, but with the obvious COVID pandemic and the impacts that that has had and the associated travel restrictions, and more recently as well as the timing with the seasons, we haven't been able to actually start with the construction yet. The expected start is later this year in August in the lower flow periods. If all things going according to plan, and the construction is expected to take 5 to 6 months. The equipment contractor has taken delivery of the equipment, and this is currently being stored in their warehouse in Pretoria in South Africa. And I've just given some pictures here, just some examples, a radar level sensor that's going to be used at Mount Bridge and at Cuito Carnival. This is to pick up water levels in the river. Examples of the vandal-proof housings that have been manufactured for certain sites. The data loggers, as you can see here on the right-hand side, linked up to the pressure transducers for EC and for water level. And then this funny-looking structure in the middle is a rain gauge with a bird protection structure on top of it as well, just to give you some examples of what has been procured so far. And then finally, it's all well and good to look at planning where these sites should be and constructing and installing equipment on site, but it's really important for consideration of how that information is going to be transferred and utilized by the member states and by OKACOM with its decision support system. This is just a graphic to give some indication of what that looks like with field measurements using GSM cell phone signal, linking to a central server, and then using software to decrypt that data, and that then gets transmitted to the member states and for verification purposes, and then after it's verified, it gets transferred to OKACOM and the decision support system. An important leg off to the right here is the flood early warning and the linkage to that with the near real-time data, which is going to have to be unverified data. This is still under discussion at this point in time, and is something that is going to be agreed upon going forward. So that was a very brief summary of the hydromet monitoring. With respect to the ecological monitoring that is being embarked upon in the program to date, is largely focusing on what has been termed the state of the basin ecological monitoring. And this is for establishing the baseline conditions and picking up changes within the system thereafter. And this is done through assessing the ecological state or the health of the aquatic ecosystems, using standard methods for Southern Africa and using indicators such as macroinvertebrates, diatoms, fish, and vegetation. As part of this process, site ground truthing has been undertaken by the team, and that was done in August of 2019. where various sites were visited in the basin and site characterizations conducted, including looking at site information, catchment condition and land use, habitat integrity. And essentially this is what was eventually decided upon in terms of the sites that are going to be used for ecological monitoring across the basin. And I won't go into each one by one, but suffices to say that they are spread across the Angolan portion of the basin into Namibia and down into Botswana. Some very brief examples. This is the Quito River, where a site was selected, the Prebe River, also in the Angolan part of the basin, and then strategically important site at Kayondo, which is just below the confluence of a number of tributaries in the upper parts of the basin. And also important to note is the different conditions of these rivers, and as a result of that, the different approaches that may be adopted at each site. Training is planned in June and July of this year, and that's going to be training on the ecological monitoring indices, and examples of that are SAS, NAS and OCAS. And basically these are methodologies looking at freshwater macroinvertebrate indices for different river types. That will also include training on mini-SAS and the iNaturalist app, and there will be accreditation undertaken on site. So that's happening later this year around June, July, at Popper Falls, if I'm not mistaken. And then in November 2021, the first ecological monitoring event will be undertaken as part of the joint monitoring surveys that I mentioned earlier as well. So that is a very quick helicopter tour through the monitoring initiatives. And then finally, on the second component that I mentioned, the flood early warning system. This is very much a work in progress, but the focus of this component is to establish a flood routing model for the basin, assess areas of flood risk, establish timings and flood warning levels, and then to establish a pilot system to demonstrate the capabilities and potential of the model. And it's important to just note at this point that the EU program doesn't have the resources to undertake a comprehensive integrated flood risk management system, but certainly it will be sufficient to have a system in place that can form building blocks for future development as well. So before I go charging into what has been done, just some very brief history of flooding in the basin. It's largely been centered around the major centers in Nkuru and Rundu and the likes of Menong, as highlighted here in red, as well as the stretch of river between Nkuru and Rundu on the Namibia-Angola border. The flooding issues typically are associated with infrastructure damage, as well as recession, agriculture, and tourism. Something to note is that there is actually an existing system, which I think our project manager mentioned earlier, in Namibia, where there's a daily flood bulletin that is issued on a daily basis during the high flow periods. And here's just a snippet of it. It utilizes data from the near real-time data from the Rundu station in Namibia. So going into the hydraulic modeling, so a number of different models for different parts of the basin have been set up, and I won't go into all the detail in this forum, but essentially it's used daily data to calibrate the models. We've used digital elevation model or contour information, starting off with relatively coarse data from SRTM, and more recently, the EU program shared data through Airbus.
Simon, will you wrap up soon, yes?
Yes, I'm on my last couple, thanks, yes. And the HECRAS model has been utilized for this. And two different types of analysis has been done. The first is on the timing models, and the importance of this is looking at is enabling the establishment of lead time for warning and evacuation notices. And this is focused on the stretch of river from Makundi up here at the top of the red polygon down to Mohemba in Botswana. And there's some examples of the time that it takes for the flows to travel between 2 points. And then linking the timing of the flows with the flooding extents enables us to form the basis of the flood early warning system. And we've also, this is the flooding extent maps, as you can see here, which allows us to identify which dwellings are affected, and linking the flood levels to the discharge, which is linked to the monitoring stations that I've already presented. And this is the last slide, just to give you an indication of the future proposed developments in the space, with some additional modeling that will be done. The most important one that I would like to highlight is the stakeholder engagement that will be undertaken just to shape the further development of the system, to make sure that it is a system that is useful to the member states and giving information that is relevant to their needs. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks, ES, and obviously respond to any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are already a few questions that have been posted on the chat box, and I think we'll give participants an opportunity for you to respond to some of those questions. It looks like our timing was very ambitious to think you could do all this in 10 minutes, as you seem to be all going above the 10 minutes, but please try those who are subsequently going to present. Now I would like to call upon the decision support system experts from OKACOM to give a brief on the DSS so that we now see how all these things link together to develop the system. Mr. Mutelo will give us this presentation, and you have the floor, sir. I'm sure you have a presentation which you share with us. I think we have the ability to share screen. Thank you. You are losing me.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
you are going to show a slideshow, yes?
yes, so thank you very much, and welcome all the people that are joining us from wherever they are at this moment. And I'm presenting on the result area of the project that relates to basin development and management framework, BDMF of the SAP implementation aspect. There are some gaps that were determined in the development of this management framework, that certain things needs to be advanced in order to reach the desired integrated management objectives of the OKACOM. One of those in this component, they identified 3 areas, that is to operationalize the decision support system within OKACOM. The second one was to ensure that there is harmony and some sort of standard between the national databases for the Cubango-Okavango River Basin. And then the third sub-result area was to make sure that there is an improved OKACOM data sharing protocol that the member states agree upon, and to make sure that the same data sharing protocol represents the instrument for the flow of data within OKACOM. Allow me to start with result area 2, sub-result area 2, 1.2 rather, which is national databases harmonized in support of the OKACOM DSS. The focus here was to ensure that that CORB members' databases are harmonized, and where possible, they should be having, just a standard format in how they keep their data for the basin. Some of the key outcomes from reconnaissance of the existing data infrastructures in the member state was to provide IT and internet access to enhance possibilities for information sharing and transfer at GABIC Minong office. The second thing was to make sure that GABIC Minong office is connected to a Hydra database. I think GABIC, if I may say it in English, just represents the cabinet for administration of hydrologic basins for Kunene and Cubango basins. Through this harmonization, the flow of data then will be easy for within OKACOM, and then it can come to OKASEC, to the decision support system database. The third sub-result area is development of the data sharing protocol. So the focus is to make sure that this protocol is signed and operational agreements with data providers are signed. So in our view, the data sharing protocol is crucial to transboundary cooperation because it lays out standard processes for sharing data in terms of how often processes in terms of the confidentiality of shared data, security of data that is shared electronically, and a whole lot other uncertainties around data sharing are ironed out in this document to make sure that it provides full guidance of how we share data within the OKACOM space. And the second part, which talks about signing operational agreements, at the moment, we have not really given this too much focus. However, we have the OKASEC, through OKACOM, through OKASEC has signed memorandum of agreements with some of the major data producers apart from the member states themselves. One of those is the Okavango Research Institute, which is a unit of the University of Botswana, CASA, and the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project. I think some of you are receiving the weekly water bulletin for the gauging station that they have in Divundu, the automated gauging station. But on this result, I think we need, while the project is still running, to do more efforts to identify who are the other data producers and sign agreements with them that they may share their data with us, and it may form part of the data suite in the DSS. The first result area itself, that's the one that is concerned with the operationalization of the OKACOM decision support system. And the aim here is to make sure that OKASEC and the member states are capacitated to fully utilize the DSS for analysis and for technical advisory. The key word is operationalization. This means that there must be something that is existing that you have to take from. So we are not creating everything from scratch. And the EU project, all of us in our portfolios have been within OKACOM for more than 2 years. So it's really getting to that time where it's becoming practical and not very theoretical like when we started. But for the sake of providing a background on the DSS, allow me to go a little bit theoretic. And I want to say that by definition, really, decision support systems are a specific class of computerized information systems that support decision-making activities in an organization. For example, GeoNode, that is familiar to most of us, is an information system, but it's not a decision support system. A decision support system is really those information systems that are interactive, and their purpose is to help decision makers to compile information, maybe from raw data, maybe from document, maybe from their personal knowledge, and maybe from models, Mike, Pittman, and the like, to identify and solve complex issues, and then to generate information that is useful for making key decisions. So essentially, decision support systems, they draw from a broad set of tools that both support informing, that are aimed at informing and support decision making. Some of those tools include GIS-related platforms. They include visualization tools like programmed dashboards. All these work to make sure that we are able to read and understand data properly. And once we have understood data properly, we are able to produce knowledge that helps us make wise decisions. In short, a decision support system is supposed to help a manager to make determinations, to make judgments, and to decide the correct course of action. So in that case, that is the set of information systems that we are really trying to develop for ourselves here within OKACOM. And those that have studied decision support systems, they say that they can't do everything. They are always limited in the nature of scope of the decisions that they can support. But what is critical is that whatever DSS you develop for yourself, it must address your real needs. As you, as a user or as a stakeholder, you define that this is really our needs. This is what needs to be addressed. And so for that reason, when we consider all those things that are requirement or requisite for a proper decision support system, we have perceived to, or we have categorized our DSS to have 5 core areas, plus maybe a 6th core area that I didn't put up on the screen here. One of the components of our decision support system will be data and information management. It has to store the data that it's going to use. And some of this data will come from the monitoring surveys that we do within OKASEC, but most of the data will come from the continuous monitoring programs of the member states. They are day-to-day recording of hydrological, water quality, water environment aspects in the reach of the river. So that when we combine all the data from Angola, Botswana, and Namibia, we have a complete set at basin level. The second component of our DSS that we envisage to develop is the basin assessment tools. These are our models, which will help us to do scenario analysis. These are our flood early warning systems and our flood analysis capabilities, which are going to be developed as part of result area on water resources management. Then the other thing is, models that are related to sediment assessment. We have actioned work, a consortium of universities in the basin through OKASEC and other partners have been contracted to assess the overall status of sediment knowledge and help us to build a sediment model. And one of the things that lacked in the previous models that have been used within OKACOM was a specific model that captured land-water interaction. So for that area, in response to that gap, drift land model was developed over the last 2 years, and it's at the stage of testing and calibration. So work has been done to fill in gaps in terms of what basin assessment tools are existing.
Can you wrap up?
Yeah, it's the last slide. And then we need a data visualization and analysis components to our DSS that will give us quarterly reports, annual reports that will give details on the state of the basin in terms of what is the ecological integrity of the basin against all the development areas. And one of the other platform is for notification and prior consultation, which is a high-level platform that this is for top managers, where they can communicate at that top high-level space and tell each other about and notify and consult with each other on the development. And then the last part is actually just the knowledge systems or the information and knowledge produced. Where can you find it? This will be the space for that. And then the sixth thing is availability of maybe some of the data that the member state can decide to avail to the public. So that will be the last one. And I think our decision support system, we envisage a 6-stage process, because a DSS is also a combination of assessment tools, and also it's a process for structuring problems and aiding decisions. So within OKACSEC, we anticipate a 6-step process of decision making. I will not elaborate on this because my time finished. I think this was my last slot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. And I know we really want to give information, but I would like to also make sure that the many questions we have been receiving through the chat and those that people who raise hands should be answered. Let me move first to the last presenter, Mema Raina's story. Are you able to put, you already have your presentation online, and let's keep to 10 minutes, please, if we can. The moment you talk, I start timing you. Are you ready?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. So I've got the graveyard shift and I will move through it swiftly. Thank you for joining us and for setting the scene, Simon and Mukendoi. Now, the land management component shifts the focus a bit away from data management and from decision support and monitoring towards actually intervening in the land and in the communities and in the livelihoods in the basin. And if I can get my slide to move to the next slide, that would help. Thank you. So out of this whole sequence that you see, the land management component is last but not least, and it goes along with land and water use guidelines and the development of these guidelines in support of future projects in the basin. So it's not just the implementation of actual interventions, but it's the development of guidelines so that we are able to, in future, also do the same or similar with other projects. Now, there are two sub-pieces to this, and the one is the harmonized guidelines, and the one is to actually have implementable projects. And these projects is what I'm going to elaborate on. So the goals of the projects is to address the drivers of land use degradation and turn around the degradation that we are seeing happening in the Cubango-Okavango River Basin. We also need to realize that we cannot just save nature for the sake of nature. We need to improve livelihoods for communities. And in addition to this, it needs to be synergistic with other activities, because we cannot do different international interventions if it does not align with each other and with the priorities of the nations that are involved. So biophysically, there is really a big strain on the environment in the basin. Deforestation through logging and charcoal production is really having a significant impact. Also, there are poor soil quality. There's a lot of fires, especially during the dry season. And of course, we need to consider climate change in future. In addition to this, we are looking at a very high population growth, especially towards the north of the basin. There's high levels of urbanization, high levels of poverty. We're really looking at a baseline of really poor communities living there. And again, fires, but the fires relate more to them trying to make a living and creating fields for agriculture. And as you can see here on the images, the logging and the charcoal production is really of a significant kind. And the deforestation that results because of it is very concerning. So we need to try and change that around. So our aim is in these projects to change around what we are seeing happening in this basin. So as I said, the population is growing at a high rate. This rate reflects in the northern parts, especially to approximately 5 children per female. Then there's small scale arable development and these slash and burn processes where every year a new field would be slashed, burnt, and then farmed on. As I said, logging and charcoal production and the poor sandy soils. And what you can see on the right-hand side here is a general view of what is happening. You can see block by block, trees being cut down, and as a result, the runoff increases, the erosion increases, and the entire degradation of this environment then reflects again on the poor livelihoods, because the two goes hand in hand. The poorer the environment becomes, the poorer the communities become. So when we look at the basin, you can see here is a screenshot of the basin, the northern part up to Nkuru. From Nkuru north is Angola, Nkuru to Mohembu, that would be Namibia, the Namibian strip, and then the delta in the Botswana area. So in Angola, a lot of the potential for intervention relates to farming and fisheries. And if we can address some of the farming and fisheries opportunities, it would make a difference in livelihoods and also hopefully reduce this degradation of nature. In Namibia, we're looking more at a bit of rain-fed agriculture, some livestock, noting that there's not a lot of livestock farming in Angola, but in Namibia, there's a more livestock farming, fishing, and gathering of non-timber forest products. And then in Botswana, we look towards rain-fed and flood recession agriculture, also a lot of livestock, fishing, and gathering of non-timber forest products, but with the addition, of course, of large-scale tourism. So the two areas that we have selected to support in terms of interventions and demonstration projects is up there towards Kuchi. It's a very rural area with a lot of villages, but the potential there especially is for honey production. Then when we look towards the Namibian side, between Nkuru-Diriko, there is an opportunity for conservation agriculture, and we would like to extend that then across the border into Namibia. So you've got Namibia and Angola both bordering the river, and if we can, on both sides of the river, improve conservation agriculture, it would definitely improve the cross-boundary and transboundary management of the resources. And because of that also, the fishing industry is being targeted in our demonstration project, where the fishing industries towards the northern side, which is Angola, and the southern side, which is Namibia, can then both benefit in a harmonized manner from this resource. So there's multiple reasons behind the selection of these two sites, and we are not going to go into this today, but we're welcome to share that with you. So finally, and I'm closing off just with saying a little bit of why conservation agriculture, and that is mainly to support climate resilience, to reduce the impact on soils and the impact on land degradation, especially deforestation. In Namibia, we would really like to move to taking conservation agriculture products and certify them as organic, because this market has increased in Namibia, and there's already a lot of farmers who are employed in the conservation agriculture arena. However, their produce is not certified, and because it's not certified, it reduces the impact. Then the EU program will be working with several hundred farmers in the region, and we would like to first improve conservation agriculture in the Angola side, and then help the Namibian side to move towards certification so that they can get higher prices at the market. Then in Angola, towards the northern area, Kuchi, honey is obviously becoming a very good crop to provide economic benefits. And this is also proven to work in Zambia, which is across the border to the east. So we would like to use some of those Zambian benefits and bring it to Angola. And here we will do honey production, assessing the status of indigenous knowledge, because these communities already produce honey, but just not marketable. And then finally, fishing, as I mentioned, it's very important. It's a rich source of protein, but fish populations are on the decline due to overfishing, and we engage in the fish protection areas. And here is specifically looking at a bit of governance and transboundary collaboration. So thank you very much, obrigada, and we welcome any questions at this stage.
Thank you very much, Marina. You are the star of this show because you kept exactly to your 10 minutes, in fact a little bit lower. Thank you very much for this, and we have saved the best for last. Colleagues, at this point in time, we are having a few minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes for questions and answer session. I hope we'll be able to do that. There have been several questions raised through the chat box, and I hope we'll be able to then respond to this. I would like to ask, there was one hand that was raised that I noted from Kalinka Pelpola. I would like to allow him, if it's feasible at this stage, for him to pose his question, and then we'll respond to that, and then respond to the questions that are in the chat box by the various presenters as they were asked. One each, I suppose, but yeah, I think we'll be able to manage that. Kalinga, are you able to? Mariana, can you stop sharing your screen also so we can be able to see our participants? Is Kalinga able to speak? Not enabled.
Which one of them raised their hand?
Kalinga had raised his hand. Okay. I think he left. I suppose Kalinga has left, but it's fine. We can now ask the colleagues. Simon, maybe you can go first because a number of questions were posed towards your presentation. You have the floor, and the other two colleagues may prepare themselves accordingly, looking at the questions that were asked.
Thank you, Yes. I have placed responses to the queries that I can answer in the chat box, but perhaps I can quickly just flick through some of them. I'm not sure how many you would like me to answer. Yes. There was one that was raised by Jeff Smithers, which was around the instrumentation and systems installed and how they will be maintained, and how the monitoring will be sustained after the project is being completed. My response there was that this obviously is an important question, and it's essential to the longevity of the infrastructure. The maintenance of the system will become the responsibility of the member states after everything has been constructed. But other initiatives and mechanisms are currently being investigated by OKACOM to provide resources to augment country initiatives. And it is certainly acknowledged that this is very important. So it is something that will be considered going forward, and as I said, it is acknowledged that it is obviously very important. There was also a question around my term better quality data, which I have responded to, and I hope I have given sufficient explanation to whoever it was who asked. I said that when I refer to better quality data, I'm largely referring to historical rainfall and streamflow records where there are sometimes missing values for days and even months within a record. And this leads to records being quite short and broken up, which makes them very difficult to use when it comes to analyzing data, doing frequency analyses on data and hydrological modeling, etc. So when we refer to better quality data, all we really mean is we're typically saying that there are complete records with few missing values, few outlier values, and a longer record length. So I hope that that helps clear that one up. And then perhaps, yes, I just respond to one more. The others I have responded to in writing, but just one around the training and the use of the hydrological modeling, the question was, and then also the HECRAS 2D model. And my response there was that yes, absolutely. Training is a key focus of the EU program across all aspects of it. It's always been a very important part of all of the planning that has been done. There will certainly be training on the hydraulic model. And we are currently actually undertaking other model training, which includes the hydrological, ecological, and inundation models, which are the basin planning tools. And that training is being conducted with member state staff, more than one individual from each member state, OKASEC staff, and including the decision support specialist. And just to point out that, you know, we feel that's important to train a number of individuals, again, to build up a community of practice and to ensure continuity into the future. So again, a very important comment and certainly one that we are focusing on as a program. Yes, maybe if I hand back to you and if there's anyone else who wants to respond to some questions. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I hope, and I think you've answered most of the questions that were relating to your part of the presentation. There are quite a few for Marina, but maybe let's get some questions that were posed to the decision support system. Mkendo, I think you must have captured some of them. Can you respond briefly to some of the questions?
I think I also tried to answer to some of the questions on the chat. Oh. And one of the questions that I didn't answer is what is the determination of confidential data? That there are two ways to arrive at confidential data. If the data provider gives specific instruction that this is confidential data, then it will be registered as such, even if it's rainfall or temperature. But then the other is through the OKASEC structures. There is a steering committee, the Okavango Basin Steering Committee. They also look at all the OKACOM data and make a determination that this specific data may be not rainfall and hydrological, because that one we are advocating to keep them open to the public, but some are especially related to socioeconomic stuff, they may make a determination that this data is confidential, and we will record it as such in the database. Access will be restricted.
Marina, can you then come and respond to some of the questions? Yes, please.
So thank you very much. I see there's quite a few. I have tried to start typing the answers to some of them. So those where I have typed answers already, I am not going to elaborate on them again. The one where I was starting to elaborate just now, and then you asked me to just present, is that it talks about what kind of models and monitoring, and it's actually too much to note in this particular webinar, but we're very happy to share afterwards with specific people about specific questions. But definitely there is a lot of modeling, and the drift model in particular is being used for ecosystem services assessment, as well as including land and water parameters. I'm going to go to the next one there. I see Peter Schmitz. Any fish farming activities? Yes, that is included in the demonstration project, which is going to run between Namibia and Angola. So I also am aware that the UNDP GEF program, which works alongside the EU program, they also have a demonstration project with regard to fish farming. So yes, that is part of that. Thank you, Chipo. I see your comment there. Jonathan Barnes. Sorry, I'm just going through. Jonathan is on hydro. Sanjay, I've got that. Eddie. I'm just reading it. Sorry, I didn't have time to read it all. Are there any opportunities to develop up and downstream value chain? Yes. So our research is laying the basis so that we can in future consider these value chains. Now, especially the conservation agriculture in Namibia, the piece that we are going to address in Namibia looks at value chains and at the value chain development. So yes, the value chains are being brought in. However, we are not going as far as carbon credit and REDD yet, because there is not currently enough time and money to do that. So especially time, I think with COVID happening, we've really been hampered by a delay in all our work. So sadly, we are not going to go as far as trying to get to the carbon credit and REDD stage, but I do believe that that opens up a brand new opportunity for future work. Belda, thank you. I see you sent me a private message and I did answer. Thank you very much. And then also, how can the program enhance fish stock value chains? I think that is a question that definitely needs a half an hour on its own, but definitely also needs to involve the UNDP GEF program at OKACOM, because it is a study completely on its own. So Belda, sadly, I think we need to take that one off the call here. And then Gisela, thank you very much. The water resources through physical instrumentation. Yes, we definitely use satellite imagery. We not only have satellite imagery for land use and for deforestation, so we can track exactly the land use change, we can track the deforestation year on year, and we can also use the satellite imagery to assess surface. Sorry guys, somebody just needs to mute themselves, please. So the satellite imagery is also used through the surface water extent. And we've got a specific contract with a service provider through the EU program, part of the procurement, where they have given us 35 years of inundation water level data through satellite imagery. And they will be also continuing with this on a month-to-month basis, giving us satellite imagery for water inundation. And that is great. So thank you very much. I think there is no other comments from that I have to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariana. I think we have would like to allow the ambassador to pose or make a statement or comment at this point in time, just before we close. Ambassador, are you able to make your comments, raise a question?
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was very interesting to follow the discussions, and I thought, you know, I wanted to crash in here again because I realized we have a very informed and interested audience. And just for me to tell all of you that, I mean, this is an area of biodiversity where the EU is very keen to engage with Botswana and with the region. And as a matter of fact, we are now approaching a new, what we call budget cycle. So we are just as we speak, we are looking into how can we cooperate in the best way, both with Botswana and the region around, but also in a bigger sort of regional perspective with SADC and so on. And we know that the whole green area, biodiversity, climate, environment, the whole green transition must be very important in whatever we do in our external action. It's a clear message from the people of Europe who have voted in national and European elections. We have to do more on the climate and green side. So while I have all of you online, I just want to say that, you know, we are interested in ideas for the future. You know, might be concrete proposals or just, you know, good ideas for how we can best approach these matters here in Botswana and regionally. So it's a sort of an appeal to all of you. If you happen to have a great idea, don't hesitate to let us know. I'm not making any promises, but we are sincerely interested to hear also what you, who I think many of you might be working with these matters in the field or at the institutions and universities, what you might have in mind. So now it's difficult to share. Our email address is long, but you can find it on our website or Facebook
on the chat
page. My colleague Alex actually put it on the chat, so that's an easy entry way for all of you. That's just what I wanted to say. Otherwise, again, thanks a lot. It was a great webinar. Thanks to OKACOM and for moreover to all of you who participated. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and we are very thankful for you to grace this webinar, and it makes it that much more important also that with your presence. I think, ladies and gentlemen, let me just take this opportunity then to thank you all for this very active participation, and it's encouraging to us that it seems we are doing something right, and I'm sure going forward, you will now be able to follow us even outside of this webinar with your questions or queries or comments, as Ambassador has indicated, even ideas for us to improve the way we are doing business and the way we are implementing this program and other programs that are being implemented to support the SAP, which is the Strategic Action Program of OKACOM. I would like to therefore thank you all for participation and wish you the best